Hi there, it's Mark, back with another Nik Collection 9 video, and today we are taking a look at blending modes, if only there was a clue. So what are they? Well, they hide in this little box over here. I'll show you two examples before we talk about them at all. This is Ella. Ella's a friend of mine. Ella's a model. Ella's currently sitting on a rock in Finkel Priory in Durham. And if we change this to colour burn, what's going on there then? It's not my cup of tea, but it just goes to show this can radically change a picture. And what about this? This is Ella, still my friend, still a model, still in Finkel Priory, still in Durham. And if we change this one to darken, it's far more subtle effect. So blending modes, how they work and what they do is what we're going to cover today. And to be honest, I've not seen many videos on them, yet it is a main feature in Nik Collection 9. So hopefully we're addressing a bit of balance there. I'm obliged to tell you that DxO give me this software for free, by the way, to do with what I want and say what I want. And so that's exactly what I'm going to do. I've got discount codes for you as well. I've got a standard discount code for 15% off, and between the 15th of June and the 28th of June 2026, there is the discount code which will get you 20% off. All the details of the codes are down below in the notes. And yes, I do get a small commission for when discount codes are used, but I'm giving all my commission to one of my favourite charities, the marvellous Motor Neuron Disease Association. So if you do use them, thank you from me, and thank you also from them. Did you know that by having discount codes and telling you makes this video technically an ad? Who knew? Anyway, let's crack on with the good stuff. You go and download those, I'll play the titles, I'll fill my coffee cup, and we'll get some work done on the other side. So blend modes then, how do they work? Well, we're in Photoshop at the moment. You don't have to be. I'm doing it for you. Do you need Photoshop? No. Why are we in Photoshop? Because in Photoshop I can create manufactured artificial scenarios to demonstrate blend modes, which aren't as obvious on a normal picture applying a filter in Nik Collection. I'm just going to major on the black and white ones first so you understand the concept, and then we'll jump back into Nik Collection. So here we go. We've got a layer, and for all intents and purposes, in Photoshop it's called a base layer. In Nik Collection, think of it as your image, and I'm going to add another layer. This layer consists of two stripes, a black stripe and a white stripe, which goes over the top of the first picture, and you can't see through them. It's literally just stuck on there as if it was, well, an extra layer. You can think of that in Nik Collection as being your filter being applied on top of your image. So the stripes is your filter, the background layer there is your image. In Photoshop it's the blended and base layers. Let us change the blend mode of the stripes layer to darken. And what's just happened? The white stripe has disappeared, but it's still there, you can see it. So why don't we see it? Because of how the blend mode works. A darken blend mode compares every single pixel in the blended mode, or in our case every single pixel in the filter, to the corresponding pixel underneath in your image. So everything from top left to bottom right between these two layers, or between the filter and your image, is compared. The winner of that comparison is the darkest pixel. Clearly a black stripe is always going to be darker than this white, those greys, all the way down to black. So in this darken blend mode, all the darks win, and we're left with a black stripe. The white, however, none of those pixels are darker or could possibly be darker than what is on the underlying image, so none of them show up. Let's quickly jump into a lighten mode, and the opposite is true. We're doing that pixel by pixel comparison between our filter and our image, or in Photoshop here, the blended and base layers. And the lighten mode says compare pixel by pixel, and whatever's the brighter pixel wins. So here, it's impossible for that black stripe to be whiter than any of the shades underneath. So they simply disappear. Hence, you see the white stripe. Here is a list of all the blend modes. On the left, these are the blend modes available in Nik Collection, and on the right what they are in Photoshop. There's more in Photoshop, but then it's a different tool to do completely different jobs. What's the difference? That's the difference. I've masked out the ones that are additional in Photoshop, and I've highlighted the ones that are additional in Nik Collection. But notwithstanding that, there's 6 groups. If you look at the horizontal lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups. And those groups are normal, which is just one layer on top of the other. You can't see through the top layer. It's in the way. The next group are all to do with variations on darkening. And we've seen that. We saw that the white stripe disappeared. The next group are all variations on lightening. And we've seen that when we saw the black stripe disappear. The next group are all to do with contrast. Now, they draw an imaginary line at 50% grey. Anything darker than grey, then it kind of applies a darkening mode, so dark pixels win. Anything lighter than 50% grey applies a lightening mode, so the light pixels win. So what you've just done there is you've darkened the darks and you've lightened the lights. So all of these are contrast changing. The next group, difference and exclusion, I've not really found a use case for them in Nik Collection, and to be honest, I don't really use them in Photoshop. So on the fact that they're not that important really, let's jump over. You might want to play with them to see what you get. You might get an effect you actually like, but let's jump over them to something more concrete. Hue, we understand a hue, that's a colour, the range within that colour, the type of blue in a blue. Saturation is the strength of that colour. Luminosity, brightness, and then there's colour itself. So what do? We'll just look at 2 of them for now. Hue, it applies the hue in the filter but retains the saturation and luminosity. So here in your filter, the various hues are applied, but it doesn't change how strong they are, saturation, and it doesn't change what their brilliance is, luminosity. If we look at the bottom of that pile there, luminosity, that retains all the colours that are in your image, but it applies the brightness levels from your filter. Alright, that sounded quite complicated, but if you play it back, I'm sure it will make more sense. But it's much easier to see, as we demonstrated, with just a black and a white stripe going on things. Let's get back into Nik Collection now and do some proper edits. So back in the wonderful world of colour effects with Ella sitting on the wall of Finkel Priory, I had previously applied soft landscape as a preset. I rather like that preset, and soft landscape then applied graduated natural density, balance and warmth, and so on. You can see those particular ones because presets are built up from your filters. All I've done with the others is I've just clicked on the title bar just to collapse them in the name of just keeping this thing looking a bit more tidy on screen while I'm demonstrating. And we jumped over to color burn and we said, what's going on there then? Well, what's going on there is exactly what we've seen before in the Photoshop example. We were blending 2 layers together, pixel by pixel, comparing what's underneath to what's on top. The filters here are on top and your image is underneath. But it's still very oppressive. What's it doing? Well, color burn really darkens things heavily, more so than other elements in the darkening group. Remember, things are in groups. You've got darken, multiply, and color burn are all part of the darkening group. So it darkens them far more heavily. It also increases the contrast. Now, if you increase the contrast on something, you're also increasing some of the saturation, but it preserves whites. So I know it doesn't look like that, but if you look at the middle of Ella's dress, just there where my mouse is, and I put this back to normal, and then color burn, that is actually not changing. So it is preserving the whites. What's it good for? In its current format, probably not much. You'd really want to lower the opacity, but it's one of these filters, it's one of those blend modes that comes into its own when you combine with a local adjustment. So I've said it darkens things, so using it with a luminosity mask and choosing a darker luminosity would be good for this particular filter, and also adjusting the opacity. It's also good for lighting effects. So if we were in analog effects here and we're putting some lens flares and things like that on, you could use that to make this filter to make it more rich. And also, if you've got a picture that is a bit washed out, a bit faded, you might want to use this to bump it up. But the power and the power with a lot of filters, you can get far better results by targeting them, and that brings us back to masking and also the strength of them with the opacity. My previous video on Nik Collection, which if I remember I'll put a link up to now, but don't go running off and watching it till you finish this one. My previous video on Nik Collection showed you the mechanics of masking. We ran through all of these and looked at the mechanics on how to apply them and tweak them. So there's one to refer afterwards. So that's what colour burn is. Do I use it? Not often, but if I did, it would be in the scenarios I've suggested, with a local adjustment and lowering the opacity. As for the others, I'm not going to go through every single one here. I'm describing the mechanics of it, and we'll leave it for you to have a look at. But let's jump over to analog effects now with the other picture Ella, and we look at more blend modes. And here we are, safely ensconced in analog effects with Ella once more. And I should have realized this. Today, 21st June, is Father's Day, and the whole reason for the recent promotion that DxO are running is it's a Father's Day promotion, and it runs from 15th through to the 28th of June. Sorry, I know I've already said that, but I got so wrapped up I didn't realize. Speaking of which, I haven't had my card from my daughter yet. Oh, words will have to be said. Anyway, just to prove my point from the previous example, let's put on a light leak. And the default one is this one under the soft category, and it's on screen 2 compared with screen 1 or even lighten. Well, you know what we're going to do, don't you? We're going to put on color burn, and then we're going to lower the opacity. And I think, although this is a light leak, we're not using it as one. Now let's have a look at the before and after. Switch the light leak off and switch it on. I think that adds a lot to this picture, and it's also an example whereby we're not using a light leak as a light leak, we're using it as a coloured wash across the picture, and we're using a blend mode to bring it to life in those darker areas, preserving the whites, making the midtones more, I'll learn to speak, making the midtones more rich, and also therefore adding some saturation in there too. So I think that as a quick edit, in fact that's all we've done. I've loaded this picture into analog effects, and it came with the basic adjustments, which I haven't touched. I've put on one light leak, chose the first one it came up with, even though that was the one I was going to pick anyway, by the way, from the soft collection, lowered the opacity. Now we can change it a little bit by moving where the light leak was. If you look at the ground in the foreground underneath her dress, you can see how that's trailing across, and you look at her skin on her face as it comes up through her, but we'll leave it square in the middle where it was. And how was that? That in reality that would have been a 15-20 second edit, and I think on this particular picture, job's done. So let's jump onto a couple more pictures to experiment with something else, and these other two are also in the pack, the zip file on my website to download. Next picture please. This time we find ourselves in colour effects with a picture of the sadly chopped down Sycamore Gap in Northumberland, and I will say no more for fear of getting some sort of ban from YouTube for expletive languages referring to the people who did it. Moving on. With this particular picture, I want to add a bit of colour stylization, so I'm going to click on the colour stylization filter, which is applied to our image, but I want to render this just across the central band. We seem to have, if I switch this off, distinct bands. We've got green, we've got this brown, then we've got our sky. So I want to apply it to the central band, but first I want to change how it interacts with a picture, and I think we'll use some blended modes such as screen. Yes. What does screen do? Well, screen is quite a complicated blend mode to describe. However, there is a simple way of describing it, and that is if you put your filter in one projector and you put your image in another projector and you shine them simultaneously onto the same screen, that's what you get. Predominantly, it nearly always brightens things, and it can create some glowing effects depending on the nature of your picture. Here I'm using it because I want to really light up this central band, which begs the question, how to just make sure it's a central band? Well, the power of good editing is in being able to target what you want to edit. So we're going to use an area selection, and I bring here, you can see the crosshairs have just changed on the far right, and I'll just drag this across, picking out that whole central band till I'm happy. I think we'll leave it there. And there you have it. Again, within the matter of half a minute, and that's with me talking to you, we've radically changed the picture, very, very simplistically, with one filter in this case, a blend mode, and a local adjustment mask. Would I edit it more? Yes, I would, but then we're stepping outside the bounds of blending and such, which this video is about. There will be future videos where we go through a pile of different pictures and just use these tools and just edit them, and I will show you my approach, my workflow, and you can judge for yourself whether you like them, which doesn't matter. What matters is taking away the techniques. Next picture, please. For our final image, we've got some sheep ambling towards us on a hike up to Shafto Crag in Northumberland. And without further ado, we're going to edit said sheep. So what I want to do here is I want to add a bit of clear view. So we're in Color Efex, adding clear view, but nothing's happened. Yes, because clear view starts off with intensity 0, and I shall bring this up a tad to about there. I think I want to use more detail, so there's a detail extractor. There it is. Let's add the detail extractor. Its default's about 25. Oh, the default is 25. There we go. And I want to bring it more or less. I think I'm happy shy of its default at about 20. Okay, do I want to alter the opacity of it? Possibly, but I don't really think that made much of a difference. I am going to add a duplex. What does duplex do? Oh, by the way, clear view. I should have said clear view removes haze, fog, mist, that sort of thing. Duplex, what does duplex do? Well, it's more like vintage, it's more dreamy, it's more dark, and I kind of like it. But I'm going to roll it off a little bit. Bring the strength down a little bit. Roll the opacity back a little bit, and I'm happy with that. Let's have a look at before and after. Before and after. So I'm not going to use a blend mode now. I'm in Color Efex. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to jump over to analog effects. There we are, and it's brought the picture in with our edit. And I did that purposely because I'm not so sure everyone knows it's easy to jump back and forward. So we're now in analog effects. I think we should try our light leak trick again. Light leak trick? Almost a tongue twister, at least it is when I try and say it. Light leaks. And let's give ourselves that challenge here. Not that it's a challenge. Colour burn. And something middling there. And I think I'll bring this down to there. So we've got it coming into horizon and centering on the sheep. But remember, we'll use opacity this time just to bring this down again. So I'm using it as a colour wash. And if we look at the before and after, and I'm happy with that as a final edit. Possibly because we've got the basic adjustments up here, possibly bring the brightness up a little bit to there. And perhaps finish with it with a vignette. But that's by the by. Today was about blend modes, and I'll let you into a little secret. The secret was I was playing throughout this. Such is the versatility of the component parts and how easy it is to put a filter on, play, delete it. You can, amongst your normal everyday editing, decide to go off on a 2 or 3 minute meander through some of the filters, through some of the presets, through some of the blend modes, and pick things up. You don't have to learn the entire spectrum of effects and presets and filters and so on to steal a march on things. So I kind of knew what I wanted to do in this video, but it was all off the cuff. I just went through it. So a little bit of knowledge about what the filters do, a little bit of knowledge through experience, which you're picking up as well on blend modes and so on. And you can very quickly, very, very quickly become very proficient at editing in Nik Collection. With that said, all that remains for me to say is please click on that subscribe button if you have not done so already. And while you're there, just to get a bit more exercise in your finger, that like button, it's been medically proven not to make you more intelligent by clicking the like button. So there you go. Give it a welly. Go on. You know you want to. And I'll see you on the next one. Any questions, comments, leave them down below. Bye for now.